Welcome to The Explainer. Let's just dive right in. Today, we're exploring the profound, honestly unforgettable narrative of Kimberly Brubaker Bradley's acclaimed book, The War That Saved My Life. We're going to do a full book summary today, digging into a story about survival. And we're not just talking about surviving on a global battlefield, but surviving inside the four walls of your own family home. Right off the bat, I want you to picture this striking contrast that defines this entire story. Imagine a young girl, a totally quiet country lane, and a peaceful little pony just grazing. Sounds idyllic, right? But then, right across the fence, you have a row of military fighter planes. That image brilliantly captures the dual nature of the world we're about to explore. It's this bizarre intersection of finding intense personal peace, while the very real, looming threat of World War II is hanging quite literally directly overhead. And that duality, it's perfectly summed up in the protagonist's own words. She says, "There are all kinds of wars. This story I'm telling starts out 4 years ago at the beginning of the summer of 1939. Our protagonist, Ada, she actually frames the massive, terrifying global conflict of World War II against her own intensely personal battles. It's just a fascinating, really brilliant way to ground a massive historical event in the lived, everyday experience of one young girl. Section 1, the war at home. So there's a really stark contrast between the two conflicts dominating our story. On one side, obviously, you have the macro scale, Hitler's war. We're talking entire nations fighting, the constant impending threat of bombs just dropping from the sky. But then, on the exact opposite side, you have the micro scale, Ada's war. Her battles were things like figuring out how to walk, surviving a deeply abusive mother, and just desperately trying to keep her younger brother, Jamie, close to her. To a 10-year-old Ada, the geopolitical conflict, it meant absolutely nothing compared to the terror she faced inside her own flat. Let's actually look a bit closer at the harrowing specifics of Ada's reality back in London. She's 10 years old, living with an entirely untreated clubfoot, what the text refers to as a crippled foot. Her mother is so unbelievably ashamed of her that Ada is confined entirely to a single third-floor room. She never leaves. She's physically abused, like at one point having her head smacked against a chair leg so hard she literally sees stars. And she's terrifyingly forced to hide the bloodstains from her scabbed foot so her mom doesn't punish her even more. Yet, despite this totally horrific environment, Ada has the sheer willpower to secretly teach herself to walk. Why? Purely to make sure she can protect her little brother. Section 2. Escaping to the countryside. Okay, so in the summer of 1939, the British government does something massive. They enact a preemptive evacuation of children from cities like London, moving them to the countryside before any bombs actually start falling. And this massive, frantic, logistical move by the government, it ends up being the exact loophole that unexpectedly frees Ada and Jamie from their mother's prison. They literally slip out and just join the evacuees. Once they get out, Ada's world just absolutely explodes. In a good way. They're taken in by a woman named Susan, who they call Miss Smith, and Ada starts hitting these incredible milestones. She's given stirrups by a girl from the Women's Voluntary Service, which allows her to ride a pony named Butter. She learns to read, write, knit, sew. You guys, she even catches a spy. For the first time in her entire life, Ada starts to realize, hey, I'm actually incredibly capable. She realizes she isn't just the cripple her mother always claimed she was. Section 3. Defining freedom and might. One day, while out in the village, Jamie and Miss Smith read this wartime poster that boldly declares, "Freedom is in peril." Now, think about Ada. She's lived her entire life locked in a single room. So she poses this incredibly loaded, totally crucial question. She just asks, what's freedom? I absolutely love Miss Smith's profound answer to this. It's so simple, but so deep. She defines freedom as the right to make decisions about yourself, about your life. Big decisions like what you want to be when you grow up or where you want to live. For Ada, this is practically a revolutionary concept. It becomes this totally pivotal emotional anchor as she starts building her own sense of self-worth. But as the second part of that wartime poster suggests, freedom isn't free. You have to defend it with might. And what is might? Might is strength, it's force. It's defending your right to make your own choices with absolutely everything you've got. Ada internalizes this deeply. She realizes she's going to have to fiercely protect her newfound independence, and not just from the Germans, but from her own past. Section 4. The reality of Dunkirk. So, we can trace this really terrifying escalation of the conflict. You have the peaceful evacuation in 1939, but then everything completely flips during the week of the Dunkirk evacuations. Small ships carrying battered, wounded soldiers begin arriving directly in their little coastal village. Spitfires from the local airfield are taking off constantly, day and night. And the village hall? It's completely transformed into a crisis center to feed and tend to these horribly injured men. The devastating reality of this hits home for Ada in a deeply, deeply traumatic way. She's helping out in a pub, right? And a soldier simply asks her for some paper and a pen so he can write a letter. Ada turns her back for just a moment, literally just a second to fetch it, and when she turns back around, the man is dead. He wasn't even visibly bleeding. He just died right there on the floor. It's this shocking, totally breathless moment where the true, lethal stakes of Hitler's war become entirely real to this little girl. Section 5. Confronting the past. Seeing all these wounded people being treated forces Ada to confront her own upbringing. It leads to this just heartbreaking realization. She thinks, Mom could have fixed my foot. She could have fixed it when I was a baby, and she could fix it now. Ada finally understands that her lifelong disability was entirely treatable from day one. And here is the emotional climax of her whole internal journey. It's the second half of that thought. She didn't want to. She wanted me to be a cripple. It's just a devastating truth. Her mother intentionally kept her disabled, leveraging that untreated clubfoot to exert absolute control over her. The disability was never Ada's fault. The true monster was the person who was supposed to be caring for her. Section 6. The bomb that saved them. Through a really tense turn of events, Ada's mother actually forces the children back to London. But Susan, Miss Smith, she tracks them down and fiercely rescues them. It's this determined, desperate journey. They take a packed train entirely filled with soldiers back to Kent. They finally get into a taxi, and they're just driving through the quiet, peaceful Sunday morning village, heading back to the safety of Susan's house. But when they finally pull up to the driveway, the house was gone. Completely gone. It had taken a direct hit from a German bomb. Half the village is standing out there in the rubble, lifting away bricks. If Susan hadn't gone to London to fight for Ada and Jamie to get them out of that horrible situation, they all would have been killed in that house. Which brings the entire narrative full circle to this incredible realization from Ada. She says, in the end, it was the combination of the two, the end of my little war against Jamie and the start of the big war, Hitler's war, that set me free. The very bombs that were meant to destroy their country miraculously created the exact circumstances, the exact timeline for Ada's personal liberation. So as we wrap up this full book summary, I want to leave you with this final, really provocative question. How did the destruction of a home finally build a life? It's the central paradox of this whole incredible story. A global tragedy shattered the world, but in doing so, it broke open the cage of one 10-year-old girl, allowing her to finally walk out into a life of her own making. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this deeper look into Ada's journey leaves you thinking about the unexpected ways we end up finding our own freedom.